Hello, welcome to my part of ENG437. I'll be looking at two subjects. This week will be air pollution and control, and next week will be noise pollution and control. In this video, I'll be looking at the first two topics in week 2, which are asking the question, what are air pollutants and how are they measured and reported. I'll go on then later on to in another video to talk about dispersion. That will involve some meteorology, weather patterns and so on. And then we'll talk about things like the health aspects, the risk associated with airborne pollutants, and what we can do to mitigate those risks. So for a start, what are pollutants? Obvious one is dust. That's solid particles, and they're from 1 to 100 microns. Then a little bit smaller we have fume, and that's still a solid particle, often a metallic oxide, and they are typically 0.03 to 3 microns. Next we have smoke, which is also solid particles, and they are from 0.05 to 1 micrometers, 1 micron. Next is mist, and that's entrained liquid particles. And finally spray, which is an aerosol, and it's characterised as being able to, it will actually settle under gravity. Okay, so we know what they are. How do we measure them? A little bit later I'll be talking about the effects, and you're all aware of smog, and you've possibly been in a situation where you found it hard to breathe. I'll relate some of my experiences in other parts of the world where the pollution was very, very much higher than safe levels, but I survived. So it's very simple what the technique. You just draw a whole lot of air through a filter at high speed, and you leave the filter running there for 24 hours, and then you take the filter paper and you weigh it, and that gives you the amount of pollutants that are trapped by a filter of that size. To put things in perspective, there are some objects compared in size with a human hair. So sand, you can see, looks like a rock. The what we call PM10, and I'll talk about that in a minute, it's the quantity of pollutants which are less than 10 microns in size. And then you have the PM2.5, which is the massive pollutants which are less than 2.5 microns in size. And you need a very powerful microscope to be able to see those. But as I'll talk to you later, the small particles can have a deleterious effect on your health. They're quite dangerous. So the latest standard uses what's known as a beta attenuation method. And the instruments that you'll be using to do a survey are of that type. They don't have filters in them. What happens is that there's a electrostatic precipitator, and that attracts the opposite charged particles, and there's a mechanism there for determining how many of the particles or how much material is lodged on those precipitators. So that's the instrument you'll be using. You need to, a couple of things. First of all, make sure you read the instructions so to understand what you're doing, and then you'll have to do a little bit of homework to find out the reference method of measuring. So you can't just go and out into a site and stick that meter in front of you. There are things that you have to take into account. Like, certainly you should be measuring the temperature and the humidity, and there are precautions you need to ensure that your clothing, dust on your clothing, and other extraneous sources of dust or smoke or fume or aerosols are not measured by that instrument. Finally, I'd like to share with you a website I found. The Tasmanian Environmental Protection Authority has 35 stations, air monitoring stations around the state. I don't know what type they are, but clearly because they send records, they send results in on a 10-minute basis, then they must be automatic, and they would be the beta type. So you might be interested to have a look at where you've been living, or have a look at Hobart, or have a look around the state and find out where the highest levels of pollution are, and see if you can relate that to a few things like perhaps the number of wood heaters. Is there any heavy industry close by? Are there unusual weather patterns at that site? So that's something you can do, and we'll talk about that in the workshop later this week. Thank you for your attention.